Hi, everybody. It is now time to go meta on your asses. So, thank you, Natasha. For those who don't know me, in my other worlds, I'm not just a storyteller. I'm also fascinated by how we as human beings need stories as both biological and social creatures. It works. By the way, this plaque is outside of the New York Public Library. There's some exquisite plaques. If you ever look down on the sidewalk, I highly recommend it. I've written about the neurology of storytelling, how it creates empathy, and the history of our growing empathy for the other through science fiction. But guys, talking about it is no longer enough. So we're going to have a little experiment for the next 20 minutes. We're going to tell each other our stories to each other. Don't panic. We need to do this because we need to know, not only within our own community, why are we here? What makes us excited about this endeavor we've embarked on? More importantly, others need to know it too. If we don't share why we're interested in this, no one will hear our message. Why do you do future research? Why do you tell future stories? Why are you in this room? What was the thing or things that inspired you to get involved in this crazy stuff? We need these stories because stories reach us emotionally, not just intellectually. They get in and crawl under the blanket of our skepticism and our analysis, and they rustle around there for a while. Stories are the language of humanity because empathy is the engine of humanity. Stories are an empathy engine that allow us to understand the inner lives of the people around us. So I want you to think back. How did you get here? And when you think about it, think about what character you are in those stories. All of us take on some form of a narrative character. So let's start. Raise your hands if you see yourself here as a writer or documenter. Hacker. You can be more than one, by the way. Thinker. Visionary. Impressive. Evil genius. I knew you, Keith. Okay, so it's only fair that I start and give you an example. It all started when I decided to write The Country's Club. Because researching my novel led me all to you, and you're all so interesting that I stuck around. So thank you. Growing up, my father fed me a steady diet of sci-fi classics. Asimov, Heinlein, Sturgeon, Le Guin. I discovered 2001, Blade Runner. I love Star Trek and Star Wars. I'm an ecumenical geek. But my favorite story is Frankenstein. And I know a lot of people in this community diss Frankenstein, but I actually see it as exactly the opposite of what you all see it. It is not a cautionary tale about the terrors of technology. It is actually the first time in Western literature we gave voice to the other. And it is the most empathetic voice, and still remains one of the most empathetic voices in the history of literature. And my other choice, not obvious because people don't think of it as sci-fi, is The Count of Monte Cristo. But if you actually think of this story, it's extraordinary. He self-creates himself, he uses the technologies available at the time, he hacks the system, etc. More importantly, it is the best damn revenge story of all time, and Hamlet can bob on it. Also crucial for me, and my personal story, is this book, The Bonfire of the Vanities. I lived through the 1980s in New York, but I also saw this repeated in the 2000s. It's happened countless times through history, this cycle of hubris and destruction. And those masters of the universe have not left. Hell, I dated a bunch of them back then. Oh. Yes, I did. And I watched more than a few of them destroyed by the very system they created, and yet still clung to, like a heroin addict, to his needle. My father was one of them. And then one day I wondered, what happens when all this cool stuff, brain-computer interfaces and nanotechnology, gets added to this cycle of power and destruction? When the players have these technologies in their hands. And I was so terrified. And that's the key. When I get scared, I know it's a story worth telling. I am the archetypal worried Jewish mother. Just ask my kids. Fear drives me. Fear of what might happen if we're not careful. Fear of a world where we stop caring about one another. Fear that our primitive brains can't handle the complexity that we have stumbled and bumbled into. Fear that what happened to people I care about will happen again, and much, much worse this time. And I did and continue to do so much research in this world that I never left this community. So I wrote the Countries Club to address my fears. I'm writing a sequel to do the same. Because I think addressing our fears is how we're going to save ourselves. So, that's me. But here we are, surrounded by all these interesting, fascinating people. So I ask you, why are you here? What got you so excited that you've done this? Why are you here? Oh, he's so excited. Just so you know, Joe Quirk's gonna be handing out the microphone, and I would like you to volunteer. And I love that Joe's going first.
Why am I here? Well, when a man and a woman love each other very much.
He's like, I'm done.
The devils. Dostoevsky. Fyodor Dostoevsky is the devil. Sometimes it's a story of Stavrogin and not Nechayev. Nechayev was the real guy. Peter Verkovensky. This was a tale of revolution in 19th century Russia. And it was essentially a big story about transformation. And it seduced me. And at first I thought it would seduce me into studying history and revolution. But what I've come to realize is it seduced me to thinking about finding those weird connections. Because what I do, if I could describe what I do in any way, it's that I seek out weird connections, try to find the things that are seemingly disparate, the threads that don't seem to link, that when you dig down, when you start to examine them, you realize that they're actually from the same cloth. And if there's when I talk about the future, when I talk about futures, when I talk about foresight, what I'm really talking about is finding those strange connections. Because when we discover the strange connections, we see a much bigger world.
That's awesome. Go Keith.
Somebody has to do it.
Yes, if you can keep them short. My clock is ticking.
I'm here because of my first husband, who passed away of leukemia. And it was not an experience I would have chosen to go through, but the experience certainly changed me. And I was 26 years old when he passed away. And I was always very interested in medicine and science. And I went into law, but the paternalism, the refusal, this is in the 1980s, and the refusal of the medical establishment at that time to acknowledge the patient's autonomy was what got me into the field of biomedical ethics. And I think this is a very natural offshoot of that. Technology, the use of technology is an expression of autonomy. So that's what brought me here.
Anyone else? Oh, awesome.
Sure. 3 things. The first is
as somebody that grew up on science fiction, it's like, well, how do we make this happen already? You know, where's my jetpack? Is the quote from earlier today. The second was sort of a recognition that, you know, I've been pushing the envelope on the software side for a long time. I need to like think about the broader culture. And the third was a sort of something that happened at my 55th birthday, when I said, you know, I think I want my 150th birthday on Mars. Well, let's just, how do I make that happen? What do I do? Who do I talk to? You know? That's sort of like, oh well, I guess I'm going to be here to help make that happen, don't I? So.
Who'd like to go next? Oh.
I was remembering that when I first met Timothy Leary, I wanted to meet him. I sort of had this thing of, I want to get to know the people who've had an influence over me in some way, and his writing had influenced me. So there was somebody I want to meet, and not only is it somebody I want to meet, I'd like to work for him. And so I let a couple of his friends know that, including his then agent, Jay Levy. And Jay took me to his house one day once he discovered I wasn't drooling crazy and, you know, just taking acid and whatnot with every breath. So I go into his modest home in what he used to call the slums of Beverly Hills. And he's kind of coming and going. He had just gotten out of jail not too long that year, married Barbara Chase, was living with her son as well, Zachary Chase. And you know, he's coming and going, flitted about almost like an insect when he was well, when he was alive and well. And suddenly, you know, they left me to sit on the couch by myself for a bit. And I'm going, well, I wonder what's up now. And he flits back in again, plumps down beside me and says, in 3 words, tell me who you are. God, what do I say to that? So I cheated. I said, I'm an angel. I used a contraction. And that's kind of how I felt at the time, because my definition of an angel is a facilitator. So I think of myself as a facilitator, and I can't think of anything better to facilitate than a really good future.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. Anybody else? How are we doing on time?
Good.
Mr. Timekeeper.
And over here, about 7 minutes.
Oh, awesome. Keep going.
So the reason why I'm here started rather early, and it was rather random. I actually grew up not far from here in Pleasanton, but also in Tokyo, so I travel back and forth very frequently. And being that it's a very long flight, I would pick up a science fiction novel just in the airport, just a random one. And it was about, I think, 92, so I was only about 10 years old at the time. I happened to pick up Bernard Vinci's A Fire Upon the Deep. And that story never left me. No matter what I did over the next 10 years, it was always in the back of my mind. And I did look up a few interesting things, like ThirdandTheFirst.com, and then making video games, but nothing that really seemed fulfilling. And it was when I picked up The Singularity is Near that everything just kind of started coming together. And it was then that I realized that this is what I have to do with my life. And I managed to try to think, how could I apply my skills? Kind of jack of all trades, but nothing that you could really apply. So I started picking up some virtual real estate. So some domains. I have transhumanist.com, .net.org, I have singulartarians.com, .net.org, just if nothing else to make sure that if I couldn't figure out what to do with it, at least someone in the community had them. But I realized that what we're doing here is we're thinking upon a scale that is beyond even what you might find in Silicon Valley or otherwise. We're not talking about 1 billion users on Facebook. We're talking about how can we affect all of humanity. And so then I was trying to look at the community and just sit back and gauge what it was that we might need. And so I was looking at two of the main domains. I'm going to speak a lot in terms of domains. One was singularity.com with Kurzweil. And the way it was packaged, as far as like documentaries, conferences, talks, reminded me almost about Microsoft. Just the way, I don't mean that in a bad way, but in a very, very professionally done, let's say. And then on the other end, you kind of had singularity.org, where it was very much the hacker ethos, the, just the underdogs that are doing like, free open source kind of fighting the good fight, so to speak. Now, if you see where I'm going with this analogy, it felt like there was something missing. And that was between the two of those, which was something more of Apple. And it's actually a coincidence somewhere in Black Bones, sure. So I picked up.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to do this. They have to be quick because we want other people to have an opportunity too.
Okay. So I picked up singularity.net, and I would like everyone to help me out, figure out what should we use it for.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyone? Ooh, right here.
I need my Phil Donahue wig.
You've got better hair than Phil, sweetie.
Yeah, I started out as really liking nature, and I ended up going to college because I just liked nature and trees and fish. Realized I couldn't get a job doing oceanography, so I ended up studying molecular genetics, and that got me into just really enjoying technology. And so I'm still an explorer of the world and the future, and this technological innovation is a part of the natural world that we exist in too. So that's it.
Joe, you run very well.
You think she's all that?
Yes. I was going to think of some long, complicated, dramatic story, but it was just simply, growing up, I just never really identified with the community, and I like all of the ideas that are discussed here, and I identify with, everything here and everybody here, and it's cool. So that's why.
That's awesome. Welcome.
Yeah.
That's my story.
Yeah, g'day. I'm from overseas. I came from Melbourne. And I've been interested in these ideas for a while. I've been kind of disconnected from a lot of the people who are doing these sorts of things and thinking about these sorts of things. And I think just coming here and connecting with people I've known digitally for quite some time has made a really good impression. I have organised conferences and developed groups over in Melbourne, but the critical mass just isn't there, so that's why I came.
No, so I wasn't cutting you off. I just wanted to say that to Adam, because I'm running out of time.
Okay, we're running out of time.
Okay.
Time for one more? We're done.
I think we're done. First of all, thank you so much. That was great. Really, I think we need to do this more often, because these ideas of why we do what we do are actually going to be the pathway to getting our ideas and philosophies across, because ideas and philosophies don't sell. Your life, your humanity sells. So I'm going to give you two quotes from two people who are far more articulate than I, of why your stories are actually art and why this matters. First, Bertolt Brecht. Art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. Your stories, personally told, are what's going to change our reality. It's what's going to change our future. They fundamentally shape the society we're going to become. So please, hold on to those stories and share them. And then from Julian Barnes' novel, Flaubert's Parrot. Do not imagine that art is something designed to give gentle uplift and self-confidence. Art is not a brassiere. At least not in the English sense. But do not forget that brassiere is the French for life jacket. Your stories are futurism's life jacket. Your stories are going to change the future. So let's please tell them together. Thank you so much.